Heat versus Celtics. We're going to do a series preview from a betting perspective. All right, VR, when you see Game 1 Sunday and the numbers are out, what jumps out at you in this series? Either team, sides, totals, what's the thing that's jumping out at you?
Perception is these are two evenly matched teams.
Really? Because I saw the series price, and the series price is, I think, in the 180 range. Now, I know the home court.
Exactly, and historical probability of home court advantage.
So you think about 180 is fair for even teams with a consideration of home court?
Exactly, because when you look at the Game 1 line, where it came out at 4.5.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You're talking about them being pretty close to even on a neutral court. So I think that shade in as far as the perception in the series is based on historical home teams and the fact we're talking about an overvalued team in the home team. You know, I think Miami is overvalued coming in.
Okay, so let's talk about this. If we're assuming that the series price in the first game tells us that the teams are even in the eyes of the marketplace, and you believe the Heat are overvalued, then you think the Celtics are a better team.
I believe the Heat are overvalued for the series, but looking at Game 1, I'm not that convinced that number has them reflects them being overvalued. I thought they could have brought it out a little higher.
Okay, so what you're saying is when you look at the series price, all right, so if it doesn't reflect them being overvalued, then you're saying
I thought the series price should have came out around 150, true odds.
So what you're saying is that clearly it's undebatable that the first round or the first game is saying that these are even teams. 4.5 for home court's about right.
Exactly.
In the NBA. And you're saying that you probably think they are even teams, but you think the series price is probably showing the Heat to be a little bit better, which you don't think is true.
Exactly.
Okay, so if anything right now, you see some value on the Celtics in the series price.
Exactly.
Now, I would think the Celtics are going to be, as a veteran team, if I think teams that are able to have win on the road typically are a more veteran team. So not having the home court is a slightly less of a disadvantage with the Celtics than it would be other teams, I think.
I totally agree. I agree with you 100%. This is LeBron's shot at revenge.
Oh, he better do this the next
More or less,
series.
Will they get past Boston? Miami didn't get past Boston last year. LeBron hasn't been able to get past Boston. Now he has a supporting cast. Can he finally get past Boston? I think all the pressure's on Miami in this one. My approach is sit back in Game 1, see how it unfolds, and find value because of that in Game 2.
All right, so you're saying that, is this because when you watch Game 1, you're going to see and understand things about the series and gain more knowledge? Or is it that whatever happens is something the public might overreact to?
Exactly. I think the public's going to overreact. So I may be looking at a total play, but I think I'm going to pass on the side. And I am looking at this series like this. I think in Game 2, the big advantage, the huge advantage will be on to Miami's side. I may be square there, but I think Miami makes a great bet in Game 2. If they lose Game 1, I think they're a must bet in Game 2.
Okay.
If they win Game 1, I think they're a must bet in Game 2.
All right, so let me see if I can figure this out. If they win, they're a must bet. If they lose, so unless it's a tie,
you're betting Miami in Game 2.
You're betting Miami in Game 2.
Yeah.
All right, so let's break down the scenarios. If they win, what makes them a must bet?
Zigzag, throw it away.
So there's going to be an overreaction with the zigzag.
And believing that this is has 7 games written all over it. The beast of the East meeting the beast of the East without Chicago in the mix. You know?
So what are the top 3 teams?
Yeah, exactly. And truth be told, no one's that sold on Chicago the way Indiana played them close in every game more or less. And because they're still considered a young team who hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs. these two teams are mature. Boston's gotten it done in the playoffs, and Miami went out and grabbed the nucleus that's expected to get it done in the playoffs. So truth be told, one of these teams was expected, if not both, to get to the Eastern Conference Championship. And we are going to get that. Now, it's obvious the way it's set up. One of these will get to the Eastern Conference Championship. Not surprisingly so. But what I'm saying is...
Howard Cosell, one time he, that one of his partners in the booth said something, goes, "You are a master of the obvious."
It's like... I'm telling you, a good bet is Miami in Game 2. Because that's the key. If Boston beats them, then I think people are going to bet Boston again. And
so you think that the zigzag wouldn't be applicable?
No, because Boston's got their number. Miami, if they win straight up especially, if they win straight up, because then we might see the points go up a little. Because Miami will be in a more or less must-win position. And we know we pay a premium for must-win positions more times than not. So I think if they even add a point to this price and take it to 6, I think a lot of money is going to come to Boston. And I don't see Boston getting out of Miami up 2-0. I don't think they even keep Game 2 close. If they're able to steal the first game, I think they get blown away in Game 2. And if they lose the first game, I think they get blown away in Game 2. Bottom line is this. Until it gets back to Boston, I think you sit back and you bet Miami in Game 2.
Okay. So we had on our podcast today, we had Brian Mahoney, who is the AP's head writer, Associated Press for the NBA. And he is based in New York. And by the way, you can check that out at pregamepodcast.com. But he follows the Knicks the most closely. And he said that Stoudemire late in that series was at 50%. All right, so let's think about these Celtics for a minute. You had 2 very close games at home in which the Knicks covered both games. Then they look good at New York, but one of the things I said is, especially once you're down 3-0, this New York team's not a team that's going to play well with their back against the wall. No. So now you say Stoudemire's 50%. All of a sudden, they had 2 disappointing games in which they fell short of expectation in Game 1 and 2. That's why they didn't cover. Then circumstances that made them look potentially good in 3 and 4. Injuries, the fact that New York's a front-running team. And now all of a sudden, Steve Kerr, who I consider to be a real expert, the announcer, said, we all got fooled by the Celtics. They were playing possum. I think they're the favorite in the East. Now, it strikes me that it's one thing to have 2 games convince you, but 2 games with potentially misleading circumstances. I think that as much as I don't like the Heat, I think the Celtics are way overrated.
Going in, the Heat, coming into the playoffs, I thought were an extremely overvalued team because they got stars, and people love to bet teams with stars. And I thought Boston, the way they got into the playoffs and being old, was a little undervalued. But the way they handled New York and how New York gave them problems,
the first game and
now they lost that undervalued tag. Being a former bookmaker, if I had to predict what the books need in Game 1, I think they're going to need Miami bad. I think the public's going to jump all over a rested Boston team with the points. I really do.
I tend to disagree, and here's why. I think when you're sharp like you are, you tend to try to put your mind into a square's perspective.
And it's too hard.
It's too much distance.
You can't put a circle into a square. The peg just don't fit.
I think that you take it 1 increment or 2 increment square, but you don't realize sometimes it's 6 or 7 increments. And I think that LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and the big 3, I just don't see there being any scenario where they're getting where they are hugely lopsided against them. Yeah, there might be games that are 60% on the other side, but they're going to take more money in most games, and when they don't take the most money, it's going to be by a small margin.
You might be right. I'm interested to see
Oh, sportsbookspy.com.
Exactly. I'm interested to see. Obviously, it's too early now. You know, and most
Well,
money
game day.
that gets bet this early will reflect mostly sharp money. Especially when there's a couple playoff games between now and then. Nobody square better, recreational better is going to be tying up Sunday's games with tonight or tomorrow's games. With that said, I can't wait to see which way the public bets with this first game.
All right, so tomorrow we're going to do a podcast, you and I, and we'll talk about things other than Boston.
We may have some Game 7s to talk about. We have a lot of Game 6s on the horizon in the NBA. Will they get to a Game 7? We'll know what we'll be breaking down tomorrow.
Absolutely. So any closing thoughts with an early look on this series?
Whenever you get two defensive teams that are both known for defense, you got to be careful of always right away assuming it's an under, because many times the odds makers are going to adjust the number. And knowing recreational bettors tend to overreact to stats like that, I think they may bring out the total lower than it really should be, and the square side may be the right side in this case, the over. Looking
But
at some
that's the
overs.
thing, is you just said the over's the square side and the under's the square side, and I think I understand what you're saying, but let's clarify. Typically,
The
people
over
want to
square.
bet
Yeah.
over.
The line's usually biased towards the over.
But when the story, because really this is about stories. What's the ESPN lead? What is the first paragraph of an article about this team?
Defense, physicalness.
That's what I'm saying. Is like in the NFL when you have two
Baltimore
great-
Steelers.
Yeah, the total's 34, and typically the public wants to bet over in the NFL like they do in any sport, but when the story is defense, they overreact sometimes to the story being defense. Though I tend to think when that happens, it brings the line back to maybe where it should have been to start with.
Because
So-
of that 1.5 point
Exactly.
bias.
If there's a point and a half
Makes
bias
sense.
in the over to start with, but now if the story's about defense, so they bring it back a point and a half,
It's
now
where
you're
it should
right
be.
where it should be. So you're not going to have any inherent bias. Now it's about the handicap.
Makes sense. Makes total sense.
You want to write?
Get that. The bias of the handicap.
All right. Your turn to continue the conversation in the comments section. Marco's going to be in for videos on Friday. In VR, you'll be back next week.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't checked it out, VR did some solo UFC videos. You can get all of those at pregame.tv.